tell me what negative things you had heard about Gen Z.
What surprised me in terms of what I had heard and what I saw was actually they're just really sweet, great kids. I don't know, like there are so many kids that age who love the Lord and want to do right, and they have seen our hypocrisy and they just don't want to be a part of that. And if we're honest with ourselves, we have to say, well, who can blame them?
You're listening to As You Go, a production of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. Wherever you're joining us from today, we're glad you're here. We want to grow together as disciples and as disciplers.
Hi, I'm Ruth McDonald, the director of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries, and the host for your podcast today. Today we have Ashley McNeese, and I've read a lot of what she's written, and she's a really great young writer. So Ashley, I'm happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk about her experiences with the young generation that we call Gen Z. But before we get into that, Ashley, I always ask all my guests, when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I cheated and I asked you ahead of time to make what are we going to talk about? And when I saw this question, I thought, oh, I wish I had like a cooler, edgier answer. I wanted to be a teacher, and that's exactly what I am.
Do you know what the influence on you was? Did you have teachers in your family?
Yes. I mean, my mom, my Aunt Nancy Cox, who was my teacher for most of my elementary years, and my Aunt Peggy Sloan. And I don't know if it was just because I really liked to read and write, and I thought that might be part of it. I don't know. But that's all I ever planned on doing. And then I will say I guess the kind of plot twist was that I stayed home for 8 years with my girls. And during that time, very much thought at one point, like, I don't think I'll ever do that again. It's just interesting how the Lord works, though, because I had in the back of my head as kind of my kind of dream job, like I'd love to teach at the college level. And I thought that was many years away. And then I got this job that I have teaching at Sam Houston State, which is up in Huntsville, Texas. Last 2 years, I've been able to be home either 2 days or 3 days with my youngest, and teach about stuff that I could just talk about all day. It's great.
Yeah. So you're a mother of 2 girls, and you are a teacher, and your husband is a teacher. So that was what you wanted to be when you grew up. So that's great. And I was interested to hear you talking about just sort of finding yourself, because we as women, we have a struggle with that, don't we? It's like, we have children, we want to stay home with the children, but sometimes it's not completely and totally fulfilling just to stay home with the children, even though we know it's the most important thing we can do. And I hear your heart there. I've struggled along the years with similar things. So now your children are in school and you're teaching at the university. So the classes that you are teaching at the college are what? Are they in the field of writing?
Yes, they are.
English.
They're English, but they are literally composition.
That's awesome. So when you were little, you never thought, I want to be a writer?
You know what? I didn't.
Okay, but it was a teacher.
I knew that I enjoyed writing and that it kind of came easily to me.
Gotcha.
But it was not until college, actually. Do you know Mike Paramore? He was my professor, and he for a bunch of English classes. And it was not until I was in his classes and got some feedback from him that I thought, like, oh, this is like something that I'm good at that I could do.
Right. That's the way life works a lot of times. And in life in general, and then also in the body of Christ, it's like we do some things, and then when we get positive feedback and we realize, hey, this might be something I'm gifted in, maybe I should pursue this. And that was kind of my path to writing as well.
I don't know if this is just a personality thing or a middle child thing. Or what, but like, what good does it do to downplay those things and to
it's kind of a false humility that we've been taught.
Like, well, at this point in my life, what am I going to say? Oh, I'm not good at that. I mean, God gifted me in that way.
Right. Right. And neither one of us are saying, oh, we're the best, most awesome writers in the whole wide world. But we
No,
are saying that that's something we enjoy, something we
there's
are
it's
passionate about.
I think it's hard because anything that you write, there is an element of it's personal, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And it's permanently out there too.
yeah, and so it doesn't really matter about if you wrote it, your name is attached to it. Like that's
Yeah.
you're identified with this thing. And so and there's so much to like publishing and all of that stuff. And so it can feel if you're not, writing books or getting published regularly, or in my case, even writing regularly, because I'm currently really not, um, to identify yourself in that way because it feels maybe disingenuous. But I go back to often something that I read years ago and this author talked about how when we ignore our gifts or we bury our gifts or whatever, that can express itself as grief.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of walk around with this missing piece of it. And that doesn't mean that I have to kind of drop everything else and write feverishly, that's just not going to happen right now. But I have to kind of keep that part of me alive or I just feel very unsettled.
Well, I wish, I'm a lot older than you. And I wish that someone had told me, or I had heard when I was younger, that I could be myself for the glory of God. I
Yes.
think I spent a whole lot of my life trying to be what I thought I should be.
Yes.
And instead of just really enjoying being who God created me to be and trusting God to put me in places where that could be effective for the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was a missionary on the mission field,
Mm-hmm.
I think I looked at my veteran missionary ladies around me and I thought, oh, I've got to do this, 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 and this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went through a period of time where I was a little bit burned out and I resurrected a couple of hobbies that I had. One of them was crocheting, which I'm not very good at crocheting, but I knew some people who were having either babies or grandbabies, and I started making little like baby boots, little sweaters. And to my amazement, I found that simple act of giving a handmade gift opened hearts in a way that I had never been able to open hearts in the Japanese culture. And I was like, do you mean to tell me I could have been like doing what I love and God would have been using it? Because I was like burying some of these things I loved because they weren't capital M ministry. Before we get too far into this, I want to bring in something. You are a writer and a teacher, and you recently wrote an article that I found excellent. It was published in one magazine, and it's called Surprised by Gen Z. And I want to talk about that. And one of the things you said in there was kind of a good segue to what we're talking about. You said, how could I be a Christian witness to students in an environment that didn't lend itself to sharing the Romans road on the first day of class? I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a creative and a personalized way to be intentional about sharing the gospel that doesn't look like what we might have grown up thinking it looked like. So first of all, tell us what is the definition, most people know, but some might not, of Gen Z?
So this is, as with all the generations, I feel like people kind of fudge the numbers a little bit.
They're kind of blurry.
Currently, I believe it's anyone born. I don't even think of it in terms of the years. I think of it in terms of age.
Yeah. So what are their ages now?
Like roughly 17, 18 right now to maybe 28, 27.
Okay. That's Gen Z.
Yeah.
Now, what generation are you?
Millennial.
You're a millennial. And when does that roughly happen?
Most people consider millennial like 1980 to, I want to say like 1994 or 5, something like that.
Generation Gen X came after you?
Gen X was, so it's boom.
I'm the very tail end of the baby boomers.
Yes, boomer, X, millennial.
Okay.
and then Gen Z, and then what's actually coming up behind them, which is the age that like my husband is teaching now, is called Gen Alpha.
Okay. So my daughter, who's 23, almost 24, would be what?
She's Gen Z.
She's Gen Z. Okay. Mm-hmm. What confuses me about that is she was born in 2000, so that makes me think she's a millennial, but that's not right.
Millennial. Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, obviously no generation or any group of people is a monolith, right? Like,
yes,
all the same. But what I have kind of come to realize, and this is true of my generation as well, it's less about, oh, they're all the same, they all think the same, they all like the same things, and more of this is the cultural moment that they came up in.
Right, and which had a huge impact on them. The TV shows, the movies, the music.
They have those shared experiences of what they were watching and hearing and wearing, that kind of thing. So
it's kind of like you find somebody in your own age group and you're like, no way, I watched that show too. And you can all sing the same songs and you can all remember the same current events that were going on. And then
for reference, my students right now were mostly born in 2006.
Right. It just blows your mind, right? How can these young adults be born in 2006?
It is startling.
So I don't know how many Gen Z followers we have out there of As You Go. I don't suspect there are a lot, although I do know we have some college age girls and even some teenage girls tuning in. But I would say the majority of our listeners are not Gen Z. So tell me, you said you were surprised in a good way. Tell me what negative things you had heard about Gen Z.
Well, you know, I am old enough to remember now being kind of in their position as a millennial, because when I was in college and, you know, roughly college, like in like my early 20s, it was millennials who were the punchline. And
these millennials.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because people still say that. And I'm like, millennials are in their 40s and have children, but okay.
You're not in your 40s, but yes.
No, I'm not. But I mean, they're my is, you know, there are are in their 40s, and we're all old now. So it's
all a matter of perspective, Ashley. You're still very young to me.
But it's just silly. It's silly to refer to, you know, like they're thinking 18 to 25, and that's just incorrect.
Yeah, they're stuck there.
But I remember being that age and thinking, well, I mean, we're just getting here as like, I didn't raise myself, you know, like, how did this happen? You know, one of the typical, I remember, kind of criticisms was like, millennials were raised on participation trophies. And I'm like, well, who was buying the trophies?
I know, it wasn't our fault that everybody got a prize.
The 8-year-old soccer players were handing themselves trophies. Like,
you're a product of the environment we created for you.
Right. It's just silly. So with Gen Z, I have seen a lot of, you know, entitlement, or I have seen and heard criticism.
You heard that there was a lot of entitlement.
Entitlement, kind of, what's the word? Kind of apathy. A lot of, you know, kind of, what people would call like extreme, you know, progressive views, maybe socially or politically. And then of course, and I mean, this isn't even a criticism, unfortunately, it's just a fact, but they have not known a world without the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, mostly. And so, you know, these kids have, they've always had smartphones. They've always, you know, they have not navigated life without those things. So
just for clarification, is that not true of your generation?
No, you
still remember.
The iPhone came out my freshman year of college.
Okay.
So
Ashley, I'm going to just say, I'm not going to tell how old you are, but you're roughly the age of my oldest daughter. And my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter are 12 years apart.
Okay.
And they represent these two different groups we're talking about.
Yeah.
The memories of my oldest daughter, Kate, are
Mhm.
way different
Mhm.
than my youngest daughter, Caroline. And because there's the culture and sociological landscape
Mhm.
changed dramatically in those 12 years.
Yes, and I think that that's why the gap feels so wide,
It
because
does.
so 10 years, 10-ish years between me and these kids,
Mm-hmm.
or really 15 years,
Yeah.
more than my
It's
goodness.
okay. It's all right. Don't freak out.
The age difference between me and my students
Mm-hmm.
feels more significant than if I were talking to someone 15 years older than I am.
Right, because more changed.
Because the change was so um kind of saturated
Very
and
rapid change technologically. Mm-hmm.
in such a short time. Even, I mean, gosh, even the last 5 years
Yes.
since the pandemic, so much has changed. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
interesting because, one of the things that I am teaching right now in this composition class is, the rhetorical concepts, audience, purpose, context. We hammer it every day. And I talk to them a lot about, when you read a book or whatever, you think about the context of that person, what the time that they were living in. So, does that excuse some of the atrocities that are represented in literature? Whatever. No, but you have to put people in their time.
Yes.
And so we are living in these kids are coming of age in a cultural moment that, I hate to use this word, really is unprecedented.
It is.
Especially in terms of, and I referenced this book in the article too, I think. Jonathan Haidt is he's an author. He's done all this research for years about, his most recent book is specifically about social media and smartphones and all of that with young people. But he's written for many years about just kind of the cultural shifts of these kind of college age and up kids and the way that they have been taught to think about things. And as I was saying about millennials, why are we making these people a scapegoat?
Mm-hmm.
Or, again, they didn't raise themselves. They didn't create the cultural moment that they were born into. And so I think, to circle back to the question, I think that what surprised me in terms of what I had heard and what I saw was actually, I mean, they're just really sweet, great kids. I don't know, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate, but at this point I've taught hundreds of them because I have so many each semester. And I'm like, I don't think it can be an anomaly for that long.
No, I don't think so. So what you were expecting is entitlement, apathy, all these negative things, but what you actually got was teachable, sweet
They're
kids
very,
that you could have an open dialogue with about many things.
they're very they're very polite. I have not, I mean, I think I'm like, is it entitlement, or is it just standing up for themselves, advocating for themselves in a way that I wasn't able to?
Right. They know how to do that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's huge because, I have had several over the years, say, I'm just really struggling mentally, or, whatever. I couldn't have done that.
I think they're more honest than your generation was. Well, I'm not honest, but more
it is an
willing
honest
to be authentic.
Yeah, but and they have the language for it.
Right.
Like I didn't even have the vocabulary at 18 to say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with anxiety."
Gotcha. Yeah.
That just wasn't a thing.
Right.
It was a thing. Specifically, as you know, unfortunately, in Christian circles, it was much less of a thing, and now it's becoming.
We try not to talk about things like that because it makes us uncomfortable. And I've talked recently on one of the podcasts about how that we always in the church feel a pressure to always be looking good and putting on the mask of that everything's great, and we've done several generations a great disservice by that.
I feel like they do that, and it's interesting too because they've had the internet for so long, and they've had kind of especially the last, however many years, kind of in their faces of like influencers and all the selling and all the things. I am seeing with my students and just online, really kind of a course correction from that. They're kind of rejecting it. I think that they are being drawn less and less to the materialism and the, looking just right, they for sure value authenticity, because again, their teenage years were spent with people in their face online trying to sell them something all the time.
Right.
A product, a lifestyle, a belief system, whatever.
That's true.
So they're not impressed by that.
Mm-hmm. So I recently heard a girl speak. She was a student at Asbury when they're calling it the awakening now, not the revival, but she was talking about her generation, which is the one we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. And she was saying that we do not want to be impressed with bells and whistles and, slick presentations. Mm-hmm. We want real. Yeah. Our generation is craving real. Mm-hmm. And she said that we want to be known, seen, and loved. Mm-hmm. And I thought, my goodness, if that's not a call for action to the church and to the body of Christ, I have never heard one, because we of all the people in the universe ought to be the most real, and we ought to be the most prepared to share the message that you are seen, known, and loved. So you actually, Ashley, in your article suggested 3 different things about how we can interact with Gen Z. And I really liked that, because I know that a lot of women my age and around, a little younger, a little older than my age, we're a little intimidated by Gen Z. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe we've heard a lot of this negative that you're talking about, or maybe we're just afraid, we're just too old and not cool enough to interact with them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not in your spot. I don't get to interact with Gen Z as much as you do, but I do get to interact with them because my kids have friends. Mm-hmm. The girl who cuts my hair is that age. The girls, I talk to people that age around, and I found them to be very pleasant, like you're talking about, and just open for real conversations in a way that maybe my generation never was. So in the points that you made in your article, the first thing you said was be curious, which I absolutely loved. Want to tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah,
as we interact with Gen Z, we need to be curious.
I think that something I've learned over the last, few years is kind of getting into their world. And, I can't and won't read or watch or listen to everything that they are, but I have a knowledge of it. I do try to read, to add to my reading list, like a few things every few months that I know that they are into, because that's always a way to connect with my students. And also, I think in addition that, obviously I feel like that's kind of true across the board. Everybody likes to talk about
their world. Yeah.
Kind of pop culture thing. But also being curious about their stories. And again, I'm in a unique position because in addition to just seeing them several times a week, they're writing for me things that are based on their personal experiences.
What a great opportunity. You're getting to see into their hearts.
Yes. And it's so interesting. And I actually I had a student yesterday who they turned in an essay, and he was like, I kind of trauma dumped on you. I'm sorry. And I was like, it's fine. It gives me so much compassion for them. And I think that's another point. So I'm kind of stepping.
That's okay. Yeah.
But
they go hand in hand, I think.
They do, because if I don't take the time, and, again, this semester, I have over 100 students. I can't really get in there with every single one of them all the time, but it's being curious about kind kind of where they're coming from, trying, they don't always want to talk in class and open up and share, but that's why I like the writing aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had so many students who have shared things with me that completely changed my perspective on who they are, how they are.
Mm-hmm.
And, going back to what you said, that's such a human. I think we have all been there in terms of feeling, we've been made to feel like wanting to be seen and known is too much. It's too needy.
Mm-mm.
And I don't think that's true. I think that we were made that way. And, ultimately what all of people are seeking is to be seen and known by God.
Right.
But again, am I getting into that with them
Mm-hmm.
in the classroom? No. But what I can do is, and they know I talk about church, and I have a lot of students who are Christians. So it's not like any of that is totally out of bounds or, whatever. But I can take every interaction I have with them, whether it's an email or chatting in class or whatever, and try to be the kindest person that they interact with at school.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And that's not that, by the way, that does not come naturally to me. And I have found that it's so insane to me, but it's just the Lord. In these now 3 years that I've been doing this is my 3rd year. It's like the Holy Spirit gives me this way of being that I am not normally. And I find myself being able to be really patient and really like warm and kind toward them, again, in a way that is, I'm not like this superhuman, like I can see what they do and roll my eyes, but somehow the Lord has just provided me with this like fondness. Yeah. That it's I love it. They're so dear to me. And I didn't expect that, because I think everyone looks at people younger than them, even if it's just kind of what they're wearing. The first few weeks I remember on campus, I was on campus thinking everyone here looks like they are dressed as an extra in like Seventh Heaven or whatever. Ninth.
Throwback styles. Yeah.
They do things and wear things, and that do baffle me or make me roll my eyes. But I have, Corrie ten Boom said, God tells us to love our enemies, and he provides, with the command, he provides the love itself.
Yes.
And they're not my enemies, obviously.
No.
But we are not the same.
Right. They're not people you would naturally gravitate toward.
No, but I find that I don't know, there has been this lovely feeling, I guess, and way that I have kind of decided to be with them, and it's provided opportunities for me to help them and care for them in ways, that I don't think I would have otherwise. So.
And I do think that's honestly one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast to talk about this, is because, as we go through this world, which obviously the name of this podcast is As You Go, we are to be like sharing the gospel, making disciples, being a witness. And as we go, a lot of the people, I would say the vast majority of the people that we meet are not like us. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you're not in a rut of the only people you're with or the people like you.
Yeah.
And you don't understand why they dress like they dress and talk like they talk and do what they do. But I think I was reading just the other day in James, where it says, it was talking about the tongue and how that with it we bless God and with it we curse people who are made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And I think the point was not our words necessarily, but the point was every person's made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. Every one of them, no matter how they dress or how they talk or how they act or what they're watching, listening to, the things that make you roll your eyes absolutely do, but they are people made in the image of God. And so if you can reach out to them, enter their world, be compassionate about the things they have gone through that have made them into who they are. Recently, I was talking to the little girl that cuts my hair. She's probably 19.
Mm-hmm.
And she was living with her boyfriend. And, I talked to her about her boyfriend and what did she like about him. And, rather than coming down on, you really shouldn't be living with your boyfriend. I wanted to know what made her tick.
Uh-huh.
I was talking to her, and the next couple of times, 2 or 3 times after that, they'd broken up because he had cheated on her. So, and then she was saying, we were talking about marriage because she had hoped this was the one she was going to marry. And now they weren't even together anymore. So we were talking about that. It's amazing what you can talk about when you're in a chair at the salon. And she was saying, well, I don't really know if I ever really want to get married because actually I've never really seen a marriage that I, respect. And so she told me all about her family and about her parents who were never married. And, so it opened up for a really great conversation. So rather than I've been trying to preach this to our women many of us are cultural Christians. I don't mean we're only cultural Christians, but many of us have come from generations of Christians. And we really have only learned how to interact with people like us. Yeah. And so as you come across people, particularly in that age group, but even not in that age group, that, they're just different. They think they're obviously of a different stripe than you are. Rather than judge them and shut down everything, be curious. Ask why, don't just ask why, but find out some backstory about what has shaped their thinking. And then your second point in the article was be compassionate. Because I told her, I can totally understand why you wouldn't be eager to get married.
Yeah.
You haven't seen the benefits of marriage. You haven't seen a good marriage modeled in front of you. So yeah, I get your hesitancy there. And I'm not saying that I condone it or whatever, but I was just having an honest conversation with her. And I find, like you do, that age group are very willing and eager to have honest conversations.
Yeah.
If you don't shut them down.
Yes. And I think that something that they are so much more skillful at than even people my age is asking questions and having the courage to do that. Because when I was that age, in a lot of spaces that I was in, that was actively discouraged. You're not going to question authority. You're not going to question the man of God.
Yeah, of course.
You're not going to question,
I saw that eye roll.
Not going to these things that are I have learned, if I've learned anything the last probably 10 years of my life, it's that God is not afraid of our questions. He welcomes them. A God that can't handle our doubts and questions is not, if that's who we have in mind, that's not accurate.
That's right.
And so I think that it's wonderful that they even feel comfortable doing that. And, does it make us bristle from time to time? Yes, I think it does. And I think it should, because there's nothing like being asked, well, why do you think that? To make you go, oh, I don't know. Do I think that because the Bible says that, or because that's the way we've always done it? Which is not, that's not a leadership strategy, the way we've always done it. So I appreciate that about them, because I think that I reread last night in anticipation of this, because I'm kind of switching gears to kids who are young people who are in church or have grown up in church. And I reread an article last night where the author, who works with young people a lot, says at this point, he believes young people are not leaving the church or leaving, evangelicalism, whatever, they're not leaving because they don't believe what has been taught. They don't believe that we believe it. They don't believe that the church believes it. There are so many kids that age who love the Lord and want to do right, and they have seen our hypocrisy, our inauthentic, the way we value image over everything, and they just don't want to be a part of that. And if we're honest with ourselves, we have to say, well, who can blame them? Mm-hmm. And I think something that I have just really come to know and decide in the last few years is it's so easy to point fingers everywhere else. Look at the world, look at the political landscape, look at Hollywood, we need to look in the mirror. That's just that I feel that in my bones. We need to look in the mirror and look at, the call is coming from inside the house.
Yes.
So many of these kids love Jesus and they want to live for him. And what is standing in the way is the, unfortunately, is the inconsistencies. And, again, that's not, I think every generation experiences that to a degree. I know mine certainly did and still is. But with the internet now, where they can actually go on and see, oh, this is who we're, so, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you can't get away with it. Mm-hmm. We can't hide the things that were once hidden because it's just all out there. And, I say, let the light in.
What you're saying are some very basic, when you boil it down to its essence, you're saying some things that the Bible says, which are the truth will set you free. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hiding the truth will never set anybody free. No. And what you said is bring it out into the light. Like there is no dark, and God is light, and in him is no darkness at all.
Yes.
The only way for darkness to lose its power is to bring it into the light.
Yes.
And when we bring it into the light, it does lose its power. And so I think it's time, what you were talking about, it's time and past for the church at large and all of us, particularly who have grown up with the Sunday school answers, mm-hmm. for us to get real. Mm-hmm. And when somebody has doubts, to be okay with sitting in that space with them and hearing their doubts. Mm-hmm. And, not be afraid when we have doubts that we need to think through and get to the other side of, because the gospel will stand up mm-hmm. to our doubts and our questions. It is not, I think that we weaken it mm-hmm. when we act like, oh no, we have doubts and it's not going to stand the test. Mm-hmm. Like if we put the gospel on trial, it will lose. No, it won't. It will stand up. But sometimes we have to be brave enough to walk into the mm-hmm. discussions.
Yes.
And we haven't encouraged that.
Mm-mm.
Well, my mama used to cry when I said I doubted anything. I mean, she was just like, kind of like one of those old Mark Lowry videos. Oh, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? My daughter has doubts. Yeah. I'm not making fun of my dear mama, but no. Was her generation, you weren't ever supposed to question anything.
No.
It's not going to fly with Gen Z.
No, and it shouldn't.
And it shouldn't.
No. And they are, we try so badly to make sure still that the church, our own church or the church, Big C, whatever, is the hero of the story.
No, Jesus is the hero of the story.
And that switch has been made for a lot of people, or they think that it's kind of, interchangeable, and it's just not.
No.
So
the church is full of people that are inconsistent, and it will always be full of people that are inconsistent. So we have to be careful not to just throw the whole baby out with the bathwater, because we are, I myself am inconsistent. Mm-hmm. But I want to strive. I don't like that word, but I do want to try to be consistent. I want to tackle the hard questions. I want to be willing to think it through, the whys and the, is this just a tradition or is this solid rock
Well, and I think, again, to go back to what you said about image bearers,
Mm-hmm.
these kids are, we can no longer talk about these, especially like social issues. They're not abstract
No, they're not. They're dealing with them.
because either they're dealing with them or at the very least, they know somebody who is. And so to make some crack about this group or that group, you're talking about their friends.
That's right. That's
right. And that hurts them. And I think that is something that, again, we were kind of able to, get away with for a long time, because in more isolated or insulated spaces, you could make the comment like that and be kind of unkind about it because, well, nobody in here thinks that. But the truth is, even, 20 years ago when I was sitting in high school classrooms, actually they were thinking about it. And what they were hearing was, I can never, ever talk to anybody about this and ask for help because this is how I'll be treated. So I think that the fact that so much, again, has moved from like the abstract to the concrete. And it's scary. I don't pretend like this is not this whole new world. Like I don't have teenagers. Yeah. My oldest niece is just turned 16. It's a whole thing. I understand that. I'm not having to navigate that with my 4-year-old and 8-year-old. Yeah. So I'm certainly not pretending to have figured it out, especially in like terms of parenting, but just in terms of being around people this age. I think that they are a lot more durable than we give them credit for as well. They're soft, they're snowflakes. They're not really.
They're not.
And that, like I said, there is no generation owns, people of every age who are entitled.
Yes, that's right.
People of every age who get offended easily. So
thank you, Ashley. I appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate it in your article that you said you are more hopeful than fearful about the future of Gen X. And I think that as the world gets to be more and more raw, we just need to get more and more real, and we need to move forward in the truth. And God's got this. We know he does. And so it's not a bad thing to bring the issues into the light, bring the truth to bear on all the situations, not just the pat answers, but a very thoughtful truth and the truth will set us free. So this is going to become more and more of an issue. And I thank you today for bringing us hope and encouragement to interact and engage with our younger friends. And I'm so happy for what you're doing and the ministry that you're having there in your university. I want to pray for you and others like you that are in the educational system that have an impact and an inroad into young lives. It's wonderful. It really is.
I do feel, like I said, it's just funny how kind of the Lord meets you with something that you weren't expecting, because I think even 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have been ready for this.
Thank you, Ashley, so much. And may God bless you and your ministry there in Texas. And all of you listening, I hope that you've taken our ramblings today and gotten some food for thought, and that God will apply it to your hearts and lives.